guests, faculty members, participants, and our dear student. On behalf of our Dean Ma'am, Dr. Maithili Ganju, our HOD Sir, Mr. Manoj Rock, and all faculty members at Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, I, Geetika Vashisht, welcome you all to the webinar on the topic Journalism during COVID-19. In fact, friends, recently we have celebrated World Press Day on May 3rd to defend the rights of freedom of press, to appreciate the work that the journalists are doing across the globe. But like in this situation, in COVID-19 situation, we are celebrating in a different way. Because in this way, we are celebrating the courage, we are saluting to the courage of journalists, because in this present time we are facing a lot of challenges. And if I'll talk about journalism, there are two kinds of challenges we are facing right now. First is the challenge of overload of disinformation and misinformation. We are living in the age of social media, and every time we just look at our mobile phones, there are lots of information. Most of them is not correct information. So now there is a huge responsibility on the shoulders of journalists to spread right news, because this is the time where the true journalism is needed the most in terms of right information. And the second biggest challenge is because of this unprecedented health crisis because of COVID-19. There is a great challenge before the reporters and the journalists to go in the field. Because asking question is one thing and getting answers for that question is another. Going to the field is the most challenging task because, as per the latest figures, if I'll see in COVID-19 patient in this category, we have a lot of journalists who are falling sick. So going out in the field, battling this virus, battling this disinformation, misinformation, there are quite a lot of challenges. And to talk about this issue, to deliberate upon this issue, we have two eminent personalities. One is Professor Shivaji Sarkar, and another is Mr. Pradeep Bagchi. Bagchi sir will join us soon because of some technical issues. I think he will take 10 to 5 minutes more to join. But presently, we have with us Professor Shivaji Sarkar. So, on behalf of our journalism department and Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, I would like to welcome you here, and we are really honored to have you here. In fact, I'll talk about Professor Shivaji Sarkar. He was my first mentor in IMC. So this is the first thing that I want to tell about sir, because I am a great admirer of Shivaji Sarkar sir. And if I'll talk about her professional career, he's a senior political and economic journalist. He's a great academician and commentator on contemporary political issues. He has worked with top media platforms like Financial Express, Pioneer, and he was the former HOD Department of English Journalism, Indian Institute of Mass Communication. And that was the time where I got the chance to meet him. That was the time, where I worked with him. Presently, Professor Sarkar is the Dean and Director of Department of Mass Communication and Journalism at Mangalatayam University, Aligarh. So we welcome you, and it's really a great honor to have you here. And I can also talk about our second personality, the second guest speaker that we have with us today, and he's going to join us soon. He's Mr. Pradeep Bagchi. He's a senior editor with Times of India, New Delhi, and he had a good career of 30 years in journalism. He has worked on multiple media platforms, and he began his career with UNI. During his decade in TV news, he was part of India Today, NewsX, and CNN IBN. He was also part of 24/7 news channel like Somoy, and he launched Energy Next, a monthly publication on renewable energy for IREDA. And Bhakti sir has also worked with All India Radio as a newscaster. And thank you, sir, both of you. I really want to thank you that you joined us today. You took out your precious time, and we are looking forward to hear great insights from you. So I'll begin our webinar with Professor Shivaji Sarkar. He's going to talk about how journalism is surviving and finding new ways in this present situation. So Shivaji sir, now it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Geetika. And thank you to Manav Rachna and Mitali and all the other colleagues in Manav Rachna for giving me this excellent opportunity to interact and especially speak on a subject that is very dear to me. Basically, I'm a very critic of journalism and journalists, but I support the journalists when it is outside the group. Because one thing, there must be self-criticism to hone up our skills, to correct ourselves, and that is what exactly we try to do each of the time. And especially this, I'm really somehow I'm confused about what is being called as COVID-19 or Corona or whatever it is. I'm not sure it is a health crisis or not. It is being projected as a health crisis, but if I go by some of the data of ICMR and even the member Niti Aayog Health, they don't say it is a lethal disease. They don't say it is a fatal disease. They say, in fact, a Niti Aayog member Health, the other day he said that the prevalence of the disease in smaller towns and even marginal towns or slightly bigger towns is also less than 1%. The ICMR DG says that the deaths are virtually quite rare in these circumstances, and possibly for any number of diseases there can be a death. But there is another question that I have. Of course, I wanted to put it at the end, but we can start that with the beginning. Does anybody actually know what this disease is? Even the doctors are slightly skeptical. They are also not sure what are the contours of this disease. But let me start with one thing. As we were discussing, these are the difficult times for everybody, the society, and every individual, the political parties, the governments, because no one is finding a clue how to get out of it. And the immediate question is, there are lots of abuses are also being hurled at journalists and journalism, the newspapers, the press, and there is also a question, will journalism survive? Will it find its way out of this difficult situation, or it will just collapse like many other professions that may have in the past? And one of the most intriguing questions that I would like to raise, I think many of you are today may not remember that on 7th January 2015 in Paris, a satirical magazine called Charlie Hebdo was the subject of a severe terrorist attack, a brutal attack in which 17 people died in the office itself and 11 of them were journalists. The question then raised, as it is being raised today, was, will journalism suffer, within brackets survive, after Charlie Hebdo attack? Luckily enough, as I find and most others find, it has, despite all sufferings across the world, has survived. But there is another aspect now that we find that politicians are becoming very intolerant when it comes to journalism. And even, I would say, the biggest nation, the biggest country, the US, its president, I think is most intolerant when it comes to journalism. It appears he's against free journalism. And not only Donald Trump, many chief ministers in India, they are also very uncanny about having a journalist around nowadays. It is something very surprising and also scary if you compare it to the politicians of the 50s who used to have journalists around them, take them around and everywhere. Now that culture is there, but they want a different kind of journalist. They don't want exactly journalists, but they just want that they should be there, sycophants who should only sing peons for them. So this period of COVID, recently in Bangladesh University on June 4th only, we had a large web seminar where a number of journalists had joined. Editor of Hindustan Times, Shashi Shekhar, was also there, and he said that this disease is going to be a landmark in world history. Landmark in the sense, he said, now the entire actions, whatever, whether journalistic, socialist, social, political, or any other action will be termed pre-COVID or post-COVID? Well, that may be or not, but it has proven that journalism is not an easy profession. And especially during this lockdown, journalism has not at all been easy. It has taken a toll on journalism in terms of infection, laying off, job losses, reduced editions, reduced pages, reduced coverage, and working under extremely watchful eyes of the states. Finances of not only newspapers, TV channels, online portals, and entertainment media plummeted to a never before low. Advertising is almost 70 to 80% it has vanished. Many newspapers closed down their editions, not only India, but across the world. An Australian group closed down 100 print editions. They have gone online. Many newspapers are going online, but at least for me, a person who has woken up every morning with a newspaper, the online is just not a cup of tea, because the cup of tea has to have the newspaper in your hand. So it is slightly, again, not very comfortable to see that. The English major newspapers, Indian newspapers like the Times of India, the Hindu, Hindustan Times, and many small papers informed journalists of reduction in salary to the tune of 10 to 30%. All these papers are coming out with 1/3 or less pages. Many have done away with Sunday supplements. TV channels closed down their digital desk randomly without giving the staffers some time to look for jobs. The newspapers reduced print orders due to a scare, maybe deliberate, that it is carrier of infection. The process of printing, ink, and chemicals used, nobody tried to tell, can't make a fresh newspaper germs carrier. Why I said maybe deliberate? Because I feel during this difficult time, television has failed its viewers, but newspapers are only coming out with inquiring stories. Possibly nobody wants that such inquiring pieces should go into the hands of a reader and he should question again. Many journalists, 53 in Mumbai, 35 in Chennai, many in other cities reportedly had the infection. Many died too. Most infected were TV journalists and camera persons. There is a bunch of reasons for this. Initially, there was a lot of editorial pressure on TV journalists at some networks to go out and get visuals of the lockdown. Then there were some over-enthusiastic journalists who possibly did not take enough precautions. They were going to hotspots and filming and doing interviews. This is what Vinod Jagdale, president of Mumbai's TV Journalists Association, says. But one thing that we are observing, the whole lot of functioning in the media is changing. Studios are becoming defunct. Anchors have set up their sets at homes and guests are being linked up through various online apps. Most channels are being run with the help of select technicians. Newspapers too function like that. Reporters send coverage online. Sub-editors and editors edit online, made their pages online, and a few machine men printed. Yes, it may be the beginning of future journalism. If the journalism offices vanish, it would have repercussion, however, because these offices are not just placed for work, but also for vibrant discussion, germination of ideas, and change agent. An editor not only leads the paper, it just does not edit the paper, it just not gives directions to his reporters and team, he is also a teacher. He sets the pace for the profession in his organization. For a reporter, expecting them to report without visiting the field or offices is not easy. They have survived now because they have developed friends across offices and organizations. They get dope at coffee houses. Recently, an editor of a Delhi newspaper criticized reporters who used to hang around in restaurant and Delhi's Khan Market or Press Club of India or Foreign Correspondents Club. though she did not say, but possibly meant they are lighter stuff who loafs around. Journalists get the best stuff during loafing around, chit chats, or just in frivolous meets, possibly some forget. If loafing around is a stop, it would be great loss for journalism. Hope it would not be so, as human beings can't survive in isolation. The COVID also led to accusation of the press being biased. For an unfavorable coverage from politicians to bureaucrats, all called the press and journalists biased. Are they really? We'll discuss it. But let us in short understand what journalism is. In my view, evidence-based writing is journalism. It can be from the field, quoting facts, possibly with attribution. Evidence-based deduction is not bias. The journalist has realization called intuition as he shuffles through facts. New ideas come out of it that germinates free discussion. Somehow, those in authority never like it. They do not want free discussion, whether in a democracy or in controlled society. Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray and UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath or Punjab Chief Minister Amrinder Singh shared peculiarly same view on reverse migration of laborers, of crores of them, at least not less than 4 crore across the country. They all said that the massive exodus was managed by political opponents to malign them. And here you just think of, if the political opponents, that means in each political party there are opponents, then what exactly is happening? The migrants were anathema for Bihar Chief Minister, he is an erstwhile socialist, Nitish Kumar, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, and all these leaders are from different political parties, but ironically shared views that is anything but human. So the long march by migrant laborers is stopped at Gujarat borders lest it hurts entrepreneurs, because the fear was if the laborers once go, they will not come back and entrepreneurs will be at a loss. The Madhya Pradesh police dropped back laborers back to Gujarat borders. It's a kind of a strange kind of alliance. Maharashtra first did not allow them to move out. Then they got special trains cancelled, lathi charged them, forced them to live in abysmal slums, often without food or amenities, then put them in buses and dropped at Madhya Pradesh borders from where they had no option but to trek. UP police ordered their sanitization with chemical-laced spray baths in Bareilly. Nitish Kumar and Mamata Banerjee did not allow their trains to reach their states. Some cycled down with their sick relatives. Many walked for thousands of kilometers, but treatment in Andhra, Odisha, West Bengal, Bihar was nothing but friendly. But if a journalist reported all that, he was called biased against the regime in that particular state and a move to malign the readers. Strange enough, the journalist can malign anybody. Deutsche Welle, the German radio and now also television, asks, can Indian media report freely about the COVID-19 crisis? Citing the resignation of Anirban Chattopadhyay, editor of one of the most widely circulated Bengali language newspaper, Anand Bazar Patrika, and Chattopadhyay himself is a very well-known journalist and a very conscious journalist and editor. It came as a surprise to the journalist community in the country. It also triggered a speculation that Chattopadhyay had been forced to step down. Chattopadhyay had recently been in the line of fire from West Bengal state authorities, with Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee openly criticizing the newspaper. Some analysts say the newspaper drew the government's ire after it reported about a shortage of personal protective equipment, that is PPE, for doctors who are treating coronavirus patients. So journalists should not possibly have reported that to keep Mamata Banerjee happy. Journalists have suffered. Rights and Risk Analyst Group, RRAG, a Delhi-based think tank, reported that between March 25 and May 31, 55 journalists were targeted. They faced arrest, registration of FIRs, summons or show cause notices, physical assaults, alleged destruction of properties, breaking of camera or mobile phones included, and threats for doing their job and exercising their right to freedom of expression. Especially in one case, a journalist in Lucknow was called by the Special Investigation Task Force, and the specialty of that SIT wanted to find out how a journalist got a piece of circular which was issued by the Education Department about the functioning of the Education Department. With 11 cases, UP leads the list of states with maximum number of attacks on media persons, followed by 6 in Jammu and Kashmir, 5 in Himachal Pradesh, 4 each in Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Odisha and Maharashtra, 2 each in Punjab, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh and Kerala, and 1 each in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Karnataka, Nagaland and Telangana. India has become one of the riskiest places for journalists in the world, RRAG says. The print, the online newspaper, reported on May 4 for covering the humanitarian crisis, administrative failure, negligence and mismanagement. At least 22 journalists were named in FIRs under the Indian Penal Code, Information Technology Act, Disaster Management Act, Motor Vehicles Act, Scheduled Tribes and Scheduled Caste Prevention of Atrocities Act and Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. At least 10 journalists were arrested for allegedly spreading within quotes fake news, exposing alleged corruption, violating lockdown rules, even though the media is a part of essential services, reporting on food shortage and the lack of PPE, among others.
Video, audio, both are on. Video, camera, both are on.
Bakshi sir, you have joined. We can see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
7 journalists have been summoned or served show cause notices for alleged factual inaccuracies and damaging the administration's image, and even for publishing an official letter that addressed the shortage of PPE and their poor quality.
I can see myself in the small screen here.
The report further said at least 9 journalists were beaten up, of which 2 were in police custody. A report on a Telangana ruling party MLA prompted the alleged demolition of a journalist's house, while a female reporter received online threats after publishing a report titled "Wildlife Hunting on a Spike, Say Forest Officials" in the Arunachal Times, states of Arunachal, of course. While the cases of attack on journalists were many, the Press Council of India made suo motu interventions on only 4 of them: FIRs against Republic TV, FIR against editors of Media Break newspaper, online threat to the editor of Arunachal Times, and threat of Did I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So except this 4, no other issues were taken up by the Press Council of India. But it is just not the loss of journalism for reporting online or live all these events, even since the sports activities all over the world has virtually come to a stop. Association of International de la Presse Sportive, the French organization, says that sports journalism has taken a massive hit across the world, including India, and many of them have lost their jobs. Similarly, those who are covering entertainment, they are also suffering in many ways because the entertainment world today is virtually at a standstill and virtually without a proper financial support. But this is not the journalists have only gone on suffering. They have done many experimentations too. The experimentations with the technology, we are seeing how they have adapted to the technology, which even some weeks back was possibly not imaginable. They have adapted to new technologies. They are able to function without studios. They are connecting people through various kind of applications, and there are even braver than them, and some of them virtually walked with the migrant laborers for hundreds of miles. I will just give one instance. The Center for Science and Environment magazine, the CSE's magazine, reporter walked hundreds of kilometers with the migrants laborers from Delhi to Lucknow to study their plight. It is causing additional stress for all professionals and children in particular. And definitely, way this journalist did it, it was not a difficult task. Walking all these 500 kilometers like any of those laborers, facing all those situations, having food sometimes or not, it's a very difficult job to do, and especially during a period that is lockdown when everybody is sitting at home. Digital technology made many changes from journalism to classroom. It has some advantages, but many disadvantages too. It is causing additional stress for all professionals and children in particular. It is straining housewives who are not getting enough leisure. Atmanirbharta has turned children to become dishwasher to room cleaners. They have itching red eyes for attending long online unhealthy classes. It strains their parents too. It pains that the society has become less questioning and inquiring during the last 3 months. They gobble up. That is basically this. Every person in the society is gobbling up whatever the authorities are saying virtually without questioning, and of course a surprising devotion. Journalists are told not to ask difficult questions for the sake of nationalism. That is unhealthy, if not dangerous. Journalists have not questioned about the disease or the ill effects of online technology. How many, even doctors, know what this disease is? ICMR DG says it is not lethal. Niti Aayog health member says fatality is extremely low. And worse, a new generation of biased readers and listeners have emerged. Each of them wants a story suited to their tastes, likings, and beliefs. And the sorry. And many of the readers surprisingly have developed political leanings. And if a journalist or news organization doesn't cater to their platter, they simply give them the tag of being biased. Recently, when one such reader in frenzy asked a senior journalist, "Are newspapers 100% objective?" He retorted, "Yes, it is evidence-based writing and unbiased." That is the strength of journalism. And I believe with this strength of journalism, with this questioning mind and inquiring mind and breaking the lockdown norms, journalism will survive, continue to question, and do course corrections for the society through a dialogue of diverse views. At the end, I have some questions for myself and for the listeners. The question is simple. Why hasn't anybody asked about the stoppage of regular trains, and why are not they being resumed? Why hospitals closed down the OPDs? Because that has caused immense sufferings to the people. Why quarantine centers are worse even than the jails and extremely mismanaged? Why was a panic created about a disease that is not so lethal? Why did not anybody ask about the rationale of lockdown? If the West has been committing a mistake, should India also have been part of it? And there is a very critical question. One thing that we are observing, that though there is officially no emergency, the National Disaster Management Act enacted in 2005 is extremely draconian. And why the left parties, Congress, its allies enacted the draconian law that impinges on freedom of all sorts and intrudes into privacy. And it also raises another question: why the opposition at that time remained silent, and why nobody is raising that question today? So there may be many questions. Similarly, there are many opportunities too, but this is just the beginning of a new process that the society is going through. Possibly this too would pass away, but this is what we have seen, that how journalism is faring well, innovating new things, and also suffering in large way. Thank you all my listeners, and thank you especially Manav Rachana, Geetika, Mithali, and everybody for this beautiful opportunity that I have given.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really wonderful to hear you. A lot of critical questions that you raised gave also, food for thought. In fact, I can see a lot of questions are coming on the screen. It's my request, humble request from the for the participants to keep posting your question, and at the end of webinar, we will take all the relevant and important questions. So meanwhile, we have Pradeep Bagchi, sir. Welcome, sir. There was some technical glitch. You took some time. We are really honored to have you, sir, here. And I've already told my participants. Let me introduce sir. Pradeep Bagchi, sir, is the senior editor with Times of India, New Delhi, and he had a wide experience of 30 years in journalism. Bagchi, sir, has worked on multiple media platforms, and he started his career with UNI. He has worked with television as well, and if I'll just take a few names, he was the part of launch team of India Today, NewsX, and he has also worked with CNN, IBN. So has a huge expertise over contemporary and topical issues, and so we are looking forward to hear from you. And students are really excited, after Shivaji sir's enlightening session, after the critical thought for food we had just now. It will be really good to listen to you, and our students are eagerly waiting for your session, sir. Sir, it's over to you. And once again, I would like to thank you that you took out your precious time and you accepted our request to come and talk on this webinar on this topic, journalism during COVID-19. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir, once again. Sir, your mic is muted. We can't hear you. Your mic is muted, I think. Can you unmute your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Now it's audible. Yes,
Okay.
we can very much hear you.
Thank you so much, Geetika, for the nice words.
It's our pleasure.
It took a lot of time, and thanks to Mithali and Gaurav who got me connected finally. And I will not take much time because I missed out a lot on Professor Sarkar's words. But anyway, I will take off from where Professor Sarkar left. But since the time is limited, about half an hour, so I'll try to put things in perspective with certain pointers as far as possible. So the topic is media in the times of COVID. Now, the whole world, as we see now, we are talking of post-COVID world. Like we had before Christ and after Christ, so it's like before COVID and after COVID. So anyway, so when you talk about media, there are two aspects to it. The impact on media, if you say. I will divide my things into basically three aspects. One is the twofold challenges, the impact on content creation and the impact on content distribution. And the second aspect will be, I will talk about the future and what lessons we have learned from COVID as media platforms. Now, as far as content, I'll start with content distribution first, because that affected content creation also in a way. Because what happened was during COVID and during the lockdown, the newspapers circulation dipped because the newspapers were not distributed. Because of lockdown, the hawkers were not allowed into the societies and all that. So the greatest hit was actually taken by the print media. Now there are two ways to look at it. Well, print media took the hit online got the hits. But then there is a difference. Online got the hits, but since there was lack of advertising, so what happened was that online could not monetize it, right? So anyway, so starting with content distribution, what I would say is that it has a huge impact on the revenues, because with the lockdown, as the industries and all were shut, so there was a huge dip in advertisement revenues. And as we know, media almost, especially in newspapers, your 90% of your revenues come through advertisements. So as the circulation dipped and the ads dipped, so it had a huge impact. Like for example, from the content perspective as well, like Times of India used to publish, say, about 32 pages or 34 pages pre-lockdown. It came down to 14 pages on an average during the lockdown. Today we have gone up a little bit, like it ranges, like today it was 18 pages, some days it is 26, some days it is 22, depending on the ads and all that. But by and large, it has affected. The pages were reduced. Supplements, for example, the supplements were dropped. A lot of supplements, Saturday supplements, Sunday supplements, Daily Times, for example, was dropped and it was added to the main paper as half a page or 1 page or whatever. So content distribution was hugely affected. Now coming to content creation. Now content creation, it's as we found out that a lot of people went to the digital platforms. So for a newspaper, how do you operate? Now the problem is that we decided to work from home after the lockdown started. So 24th of March, the lockdown started. From 25th March, we have been working from home. Now, work from home sounds good for other professions like, say, IT and all that. But for media, work from home is an alien concept, in the sense that media cannot operate in a work from home syndrome. Because what happens is you need to be, like as editors, we need to be in touch with each other. As reporters, you need to go out to the field, you need to meet your sources, you need to go to the ministries, you need to meet your whatever people you need to be on the streets. So work from home is quite alien, but we had to adapt. There was no other way out. So our edit meetings were held virtually on online platforms like MS Teams and all that. Newspapers also reporting to a great extent went virtual. For example, press conferences and all that was covered from home, because you just logged in to the press conference and you covered the event. So what happened was, if you see the impact, now from the editorial perspective, I would say there is something called, it has a negative impact in the sense that it destroys knowledge gathering through peers. Because when you are in office, when you discuss, a lot of things are discussed, especially I would say juniors, for example. They learn a lot when they are, meeting the seniors, talking to them on a variety of topics. Now, when you are at home, you just talk business and nothing more. So your peer learning takes a hit, especially for juniors. For them, mentoring doesn't happen the way it happens inside an office. So that's a disadvantage, because edit meetings, you just like today, you have an edit meeting 1 hour. So you go cut to cut, you discuss stories. But once you are in office, you discuss a lot of other issues related issues that affects. Second, as reporters, for example, it affects because you can't meet your sources. Your news gathering is affected. You can't ask questions. So as a reporter, your main job is to ask questions. So your questioning is reduced. Investigative journalism, for example, takes a hit. Because for investigations, for investigative journalism, he needs to go. He needs to go to the spot. He needs to go to the offices. He needs to go to the ministries. He needs to go to meet the officers concerned. He can't do it now. So that's a huge hit, I would say, as far as content goes. So your content gets very limited. So today, if you see, like for example, last 3 months, your content was limited to COVID. Now, of course, India-China standoff is there last 1 month or so, 1 or 2 months. That has also is hogging the headlines. But otherwise, so your content is also limited. So you are just talking about COVID. So your story mapping gets very limited. So on your edit meetings, these days, for example, bulk of your time goes in mapping stories related to COVID. Now there, of course, you think of various stories like how lockdown has affected mental health issues, how lockdown has given rise to more, say, for example, domestic violence, how lockdown can help, how this COVID situation, even post-COVID situation can affect, for example, something like, say, film industry. Forget about the impact on tourism and travel. The film industry, the filmmaking will not be the same. So, of course, those issues are there. So, the bit of Professor Sarkar's speech that I got, he talked about the effect of the media. So I also see this. Now, this is the impact is, how much time I have, Geetika, if I may ask, another 20 minutes? I don't have your audio, Geetika.
Sir, yes, another 20 minutes.
Yes, sir. You have 20 to 25 minutes with you.
25 minutes?
You can go ahead.
Okay, yes. I'll try to cover as much as I can. So, but Professor Sarkar was talking about the Disaster Management Act and all that, the impact on media on all this situation. Yes, that's a huge thing. I mean, media autonomy, I would say, is affected in such situations. Like in wartime. So COVID is also being seen as a war. I mean, you are fighting a war against a public health emergency. So what happens is, like Yuval Harari had talked about it, and how it affects media autonomy, because you're not supposed to ask questions. Under the National Disaster Management Act, the government takes certain decisions, and you are not supposed to ask questions in the larger interest. Now the question is, what happens is, in these wartime measures and these emergency type of measures, they continue beyond the emergency, after the emergency is over. So certain rules which have been put in place right now might continue much after the COVID is over. And that is the risk. Like a lot of rules which were formed during maybe World War II continue even now. So it's like that. So there lies the problem. So it affects media autonomy that way, number one. Like, for example, the Arogya Setu, for example. Now, Arogya Setu is very important to track COVID cases. It's very important as of now, yes, a lot of people see it. But the risk is that how long this Arogya Setu will be mandatory while traveling, while you are going while you are taking a flight, because they are also tracking you, by the way. Through Arogya Setu, they know which flight you are taking, from where to where, wherever you go, in Delhi, within Delhi, where you are moving. So they know they are tracking your movement. So at a certain level, it is also an impact on your privacy. And this, you don't know how long this is going to remain. So that's the risk. The second is, what leads to dilution of media autonomy is that with advertisement going down, ad revenue going down, because the companies are not doing well, because the business is not doing well, because the economy is not doing well. So you have more and more dependence on government ads. So the more and more dependence on government ads will lead to dilution of your autonomy. Third impact is, as I see, the small media outfits. Like big media outfits like Times of India and HT can still survive such a financial crisis, though a lot of jobs have been affected, a lot of editions have been stopped, smaller editions. But the smaller media cannot take that kind of a hit. So what happens is, it affects localization of media, because the smaller media helps in localization. of news. So that is affected. Even bigger houses, for example, their localization of news, for example, like our smaller editions, we have stopped quite a few smaller editions because they're not economically viable anymore in this situation. So that affects localization of news. That's another hit. So the other hit is, but the positive aspect of this COVID thing on the media has been that people at least reposed faith. So you had even the Prime Minister saying that, you know, media is part of the COVID warriors. I mean, we didn't need passes. We were allowed because you are supposed to be in the field. Why? Because media was supposed to give you authentic information. One word which became very popular during the COVID times is infodemic. Because what happened was the social media, as people were at home and they were on the social media platforms all the time, whether on Facebook or WhatsApp or Twitter or whatever. So what happens was that this was getting too much overpowering. Then it led to a lot of misinformation getting, or disinformation, in fact, getting circulated. So that's why this infodemic concept came. So because today what happens is in social media, the danger is, I call it 3 Vs. User generated content, as we see in social media, there are 3 Vs. One is the volume. The volume is very, very huge because everybody is a content creator. Second is the velocity. The velocity is huge. You get a WhatsApp from Bombay, and maybe half an hour later, you can get the same WhatsApp from Kohima. At least imagine the circulation of the velocity is huge. And third is the variety of content, because everybody is a content creator. So the 3 Vs, I would say, they are actually, I see it as a very dangerous thing, actually. So to counter that, so people said, no, you read the newspapers. So newspapers always came out with that tagline during the COVID times that we spread news and not infection. So you had this, so media's importance was enhanced. So at least you are sure that if you are reading a newspaper, if something is coming out, a lot of people say that, you know, haldi khane se COVID theek ho jata hai in the WhatsApp University, so a lot of things. So once you see it in the newspaper, you know, okay, this is the authentic thing. These are the authentic do's and don'ts to tackle COVID. So in the lockdown, the media was the only window to the outer world, to the authentic outer world. Otherwise, people are at home. So you didn't get the reality. In any case, nobody gets the reality in this world. You get only partial reality. So anyway, now I'll talk about, because it'll be 15 minutes, I'll try to cover. So I will talk about, we can take questions later on if somebody has. So I'll talk about the post-COVID situation. So what media has learned and how do we plan? So it's a challenge, actually, because this is a challenge which is not going to go away. And it's going to stay for pretty long, for maybe quite a few years, maybe for decades. A lot of people say that this infection is going to be there. So like we never got a medicine for flu. So media has to reinvent itself. I've been watching closely the innovations. So media has to reinvent itself in a post-COVID world. The other day, I mean, like last year, I think a lot of like this virtual thing happening and virtual meetings and all. So I see a lot of influence of infotech on media in the days to come. Like some time back, about 6 months back, we got a software on trial in Times of India, and it was an editing software. So actually, they were trying it out. It'll edit. The reporter gives a copy. So say it's 500 words. You need 300 words for your newspaper. So you just program it that I need 300 words. The software will edit it into 300 words. So they were doing it. So and we were trying it because so maybe 5 years down the line, the job of a sub-editor will be taken over by this software. You never know. For example, some time back, we saw in China. These days, of course, you talk about China and something else comes to your mind. But some days back, it was last year, I think, or last year, 2 years back, China tried a robotic anchor, a robot as an anchor. I think a lot of people might have seen it, on WhatsApp and all that. So, and maybe I see in another 5 years down the line, you might have robotic anchors. You might have drones for reporting. Because of this lockdown and all that, say for example, you have to cover something like a migrant crisis on the Ghaziabad highway, and you don't want to risk your reporter going there and catch infection, so you send a drone. It captures the images, it captures the essence of it, and based on that you write your report and you get your visuals from there. So you need not send the television team, did not go there. It gets the audio, it gets the visuals from the drones. So I will not be surprised if drones are deployed for reporting, like drones are already being deployed for camera work these days. I mean, it's widely used. So I'll not be surprised if instead of reporters on the ground, we'll have drones on the ground. Then if you see, what will happen is, this has been a trend, it has been happening, but I think it will get more and more accentuated. It will get more and more pronounced in the days, in the months, in the years to come. A lot of people say that we live in a complex world. I say, actually, we live in a multiplexed world. Everything is about multiplexes. We talk about multimedia. We talk about everything is multi. So you have to have that variety. So multimedia, when you talk about multimedia, there's something which is called transmedia narrative or transmedia storytelling. Now this is Henry Jenkins, a communication theorist, had talked about the convergence culture. That is, transmedia narrative is telling a story across media platforms and formats with the help of digital technology. So more and more people, I think a lot of attendees are students of journalism. They want to be journalists in future. I think they have to be prepared to be storytellers across media platforms. You might have to tell a story for the digital platform. You might have to tell the same story, write the same story for the print format. You have to write the same story for the television channel that your organization is running. And you might have to write the same story for the mobile platform. I'm coming to the role of mobiles a little later. So this will be the need. I mean, when you talk about multitasking, because you know what happens is there's a craft of storytelling. It's also like Marshall McLuhan talked about how medium becomes the message. So how actually the medium dictates the craft of storytelling. So if you write a story for a television channel, you will write it differently. The same story for writing for news and shots for a mobile phone, for a mobile app, it will be 50 words and a picture, you'll write the story differently. Write the same story for Times of India newspaper, you'll write it differently. So you have to have this capability of working in all platforms. You can't be just seen as a print journalist or a television journalist or a digital. So everything will go digital, but the digital platform has the widest variety of formats. You have to make them visually interesting. You have to have graphics. You have to have, that's a different debate. That's a different topic, of course. The trends in media, I will not get into that. It's a huge topic by itself. So what happens is, with this, you have to constantly innovate. Innovation will be the key word. Like innovation, we normally relate with IT and all that, but there are two things which I find are two aspects where there is constant innovation going on. One is the media technology, infotech, and the other is the medical technology. So infotech, you have to constantly innovate. And your smartphone will be the main driver of your media innovation. For example, the other day, I was watching a football match. Now, I'll come to that later. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks before that, I was watching a football match. After football resumed, actually, after lockdown, the English Premier League. You know what they did? The stands are empty. But empty stands, there is commentary going on, of course. But you have to get the audience. I mean, you have to get the audience feel. Now, how do you get it? So what they did was, they ran along with the commentary, canned audio of audience sound, of the crowd sound. So the buzz was there. With the commentary, you could hear that buzz, that crowd buzz, which you find in the stadium. So to get you this feel of a stadium, they did that. Though there was not a single spectator on the ground, but they did that. So that was immediately after the football matches started. And last week when I saw the match, a very nice match between Chelsea and Manchester City, which actually decided the winner of EPL, and because Chelsea won, so Liverpool became the winners after 30 years. So then I saw the innovation has gone a step further. You know what they did? Because you don't have crowd, you don't have a single spectator. So how do you create that spectator atmosphere? So what they did was, Star News I'm talking about, they had mobile cameras of the spectators, right? So what they did was, before the match, they must have announced. So you downloaded that app, through your mobile phone, you got connected to the telecast. So they showed crowd from sitting in their homes. So when the goal was scored, you could see the crowd jumping. You could see a lot of people. The screen was full of those people. Like you see, like participants, you can see a lot of screens. So you see a lot of screens. You saw a lot of screens there on your television screen. People jumping with joy, the supporters of Chelsea and Liverpool and whatever. So you got that crowd through the mobile camera, through the mobile. And I remember I read about Uday Shankar, who happened to be a boss at one point, who is the chief of Star News right now, Star Group. He had talked about it actually, that we were thinking, because they have the rights. So how do you get crowd? How do you involve crowd? So they said, no, there are mobile phones, and each mobile phone has a camera. So we'll try to capture the crowd, the mood of the crowd on that mobile phone, and we will telecast it. It will become part of the telecast. So this is, I see this as a kind of the canned spectator sound and the scanned spectator reaction as a kind of media innovation. Because COVID, you never know when the crowds will be back again to the stadiums. So this is one innovation. So I talked about the transmedia thing. So your cross-media presentation of news will only get more and more pronounced. And what will happen is that news curation will take more importance. You had news. See, after these digital platforms and all that, what we saw was initially news aggregation. So you had news aggregators. You had like Google, who will put Times of India, something from NDTV, something from various sources, and put them together at one place. So if you are if you are a reader or a viewer, so you log on and you get to know the best of every platform. Like you get to know NDTV's best story and Times of India's best story and Hindustan Times best story and all that. So that was just news aggregation. We just put them together. But now there will be more and more news curation. You get the news, you curate it also, you develop it. So that will be your contribution. For example, a lot of people say that media has become opinionated today. It is a fact, media has become opinionated. Which is wrong. Like news, like Peter Scott, C.P. Scott, the Guardian founder in 1926 talked about how news is sacred and opinion is free. And today it is opinion is sacred and news is free. It's just the reverse. So the question is that news has become opinionated. I mean, I know, like 30 years back when I joined the profession, The way Times of India used to report, because I used to read Times of India then also and some other papers, today the newspaper reporting has changed. You know why it has changed? Because the other media platforms have come in. So if Times of India writes the same, it gives the same facts which are already there in the public domain and which people have come to know the day before, like on Twitter, on television channels and everywhere. So if you publish the same factual news, who's going to buy your newspaper? So with the facts, you have to give certain opinion. You have to give certain views. So that is how things have changed. So now news aggregation, I see more and more news creation. And this I will see more and more in terms of, there will be more in terms of social media, integration of social media with the mainstream media. The process has started already. Like Times of India, every reporter is supposed to have a Twitter account, is supposed to tweet if there's a news development. He's supposed to put it on WhatsApp and all that. So, and you are also, your increment, by the way, depends on that. So they see how many news items you have put on Times of India's Twitter account. Because the newspaper knows that you have to be visible on the social media platforms. So I see more and more integration of the social media with the mainstream media. Right? So the last, I've got another 5 minutes, Geetika. Another 5 minutes. How much time I have? 5 minutes?
Yes, sir, you can take, yes, 5 minutes, you can take, yeah.
Okay. So I'll come to the last point, but I could have talked about, so today, today we have got maybe Twitter. Tomorrow I will ask our reporters to put their short stories on TikTok. Now TikTok has been banned, by the way, but maybe on Instagram, maybe on Facebook. So Times of India has to have a presence. Every media platform has to have a presence on Facebook, because you know that you get, because you know what has happened in social media, how it is more impactful is that people, it is very personalized. If something comes on your Facebook page, you take it as if somebody is communicating to you directly. So it serves the message of, it serves the purpose of direct messaging. And that is where people believe whatever is in on WhatsApp. Because they think, oh, it's on my phone. I mean, you tend to believe, it's human psychology. So that is where even advertisers are trying to target social media. So mainstream media will have to utilize, will have to harness this impact of social media. So that's why we say that today we talk about blue media, that you're constantly with some media platform or the other. We're in a blue media syndrome, like from 6 o'clock in the morning till 12 at night, till the time we hit the bed. We are with some media platform or the other. We are on the WhatsApp, or we are on Facebook, or you are on the mail, or we are logged into your newspaper, or you are on the computer screen, or you are on your television screen. So some media platform or the other, there is direct messaging all the time. Now the last point is, what will happen is, and I think in America they thought about it much earlier, and we need to think about it a little more, especially that infodemic that we are talking about, the fake news thing and all that. News literacy. The importance of news literacy will go up. Now, news literacy I find is very low, even among journalists. What is news literacy? Now, Stony Brook in the US started this about 10 years back. They are so ahead of us, actually. They could see this problem coming up. Now, news literacy is the ability to recognize the difference between journalism and other kinds of information, between news and opinion, the ability to detect bias in news. So how many people have it? People get carried away. So news literacy will be very, very critical in the days to come, because with this kind of a situation, infodemic actually rules. And of course, the media content might change. Tomorrow, maybe, at least in the immediate future, if you ask me, I think more and more focus will be on public health issues, which was not so much in focus all these years. Health infrastructure, for example. How many media reports were there before COVID that India is such a huge country that how many ICU beds we should have? how many oxygen cylinders we should have, how many masks we should have, how many ventilators we should have. But today we talk about all that. So maybe more and more health, public health will take focus in the years to come, in the months ahead at least. And as I said, storytelling will change. And people who are trying to join this profession, they have to be very, very prepared to have all kinds of expertise in the sense that to how to get across your message. Because at the end of the day, I would say, those who tell stories rule the world. So your content is king, and you have to be the king of content. And to be that, you have to keep pace constantly with the innovations. You have to think like Star News thought, how to get crowd, because if you think watching a football match without the sound of crowd, the commentary without the sound of crowd will look bad. Like in television stories, sometimes we didn't have ambience. So we cheated ambience because we had to, because otherwise it will not look good, it will not look natural. So constantly people are innovating. So in media world also, we have to constantly innovate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me a patient hearing, because it's not interactive, I know, and this gets difficult for the listeners. Thank you so much.
No, sir, indeed, it was our pleasure to have you. I think the things that you spoke about journalism was really great for us to listen. In fact, nowadays we are in a stage of transition, how from the conventional and traditional media, we are moving to a post-COVID situation, where you gave a very futuristic vision, like we can have gadgets, we can have drones, and where content is the king. And the word that you gave to us, like transmedia narrative, of course we all knew about cross media platforms, we knew about convergence, but the transmedia narrative that you talked about, how as a journalist, as a future journalist, we should all be equipped with all the skills so that we can do due justice to this platform. In fact, Shivaji Sarkar also talked about some of the views that you shared, about nested National Disaster Act, and under which the media autonomy will be in danger. In fact, indeed, it was a nice webinar. It was very good, webinar. It was really good to hear both of you. In fact, we have a lot of questions coming up on the screen. So I will ask questions one by one. And I would request participants to please specify the questions to whom you want to ask. And we'll start with this first question. Maybe Sir Shivaji Sarkar would like to start with this. Sir, there is a question from Ashok Vashisht. He has written, वर्तमान परिप्रेक्ष्य में पत्रकारिता हेतु कौन-कौन सी चुनौतियां हैं? वैसे तो आपने बहुत सारे challenges के बारे में बात किया है, but if you just talk about this question, what are the challenges you think are there, in this journalism world?
Sir का mic
So we
mute है.
can't hear you.
Yes,
Sir, we can't hear you. Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
The question is for me.
Yes, sir.
नहीं, वर्तमान परिप्रेक्ष्य में नहीं, पत्रकारिता में तो चैलेंजेस जो है कभी खत्म नहीं होती है, एक चैलेंज खत्म होती है दूसरी आती रहती है, इसलिए पत्रकारिता में चैलेंजेस का न होना ही समस्या है। चैलेंजेस जितनी होती रहती है, पत्रकारिता उतनी तीखी होती रहती है। हाँ, वर्तमान परिप्रेक्ष्य में सबसे बड़ी जो मेरे ख्याल में चैलेंज एक भी है, जो अभी बाकी साहब भी कह रहे थे, उन्होंने सीधे सीधे नहीं कहा, थोड़ा सा हिंट भी किया कि अब आप पत्रकार होने के लिए सिर्फ ये जरूरी नहीं है कि आपको सिर्फ भाषा ही आती हो, आपको सिर्फ लिखना आता हो या आप कीबोर्ड दबा लेते हो। अब आपको अलग अलग तरीके के जो डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ एप्स है, जो टेक्नोलॉजी है, उसका इस्तेमाल आना चाहिए, और उनको मिश्रण कैसे करें, आप मिश्रण करके अपनी जो प्रोडक्शन है, जो इनोवेशन जिसकी बात वो कह रहे थे, वो इनोवेटिव प्रोडक्ट कैसे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अच्छा हो। तो चैलेंज तो बहुत है, और आपको कितना सीखना है पत्रकारिता में। देखिए, एक ज़माना था जब एक सिर्फ छोटे से टाइपराइटर होता था, उसके बाद लाइनो मशीन होती थी, उसके बाद प्रिंटर होता था, उसके बीच में भी तमाम तरह की लाइनें होती थी, और उसके बाद लोगों के दिल में जब हम टाइप करते थे और एक स्टोरी हम लिखते थे और हम एडिटर के पास ले जाते थे, और लाल कलम से पूरा काट देते थे और कहते थे जाओ दोबारा टाइप करके लाओ, तो वो जो दर्द होती थी तो वो दर्द अब बहुत कम हो गई है। तो इस तरह से चैलेंज तो रहेंगे, आगे भी रहेंगे और चैलेंज बढ़ते रहेंगे। पॉलिटिकल चैलेंजेस होंगे, सोशल चैलेंजेस होंगे और टेक्नोलॉजिकल चैलेंजेस के साथ साथ जर्नलिस्टिक चैलेंज इस बात का होगा कि आपका अखबार अगर प्रिंट नहीं हो रहा है, और जैसा कि अब आगे दिख रहा है कि ऑनलाइन अखबार ही चलेंगे, तो ऑनलाइन अखबार आप कैसे बेचेंगे, ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज होगा।
Yeah, thank you, sir, for that answer. And the second question is for Bhakti, sir. So, this is a question posed by Preeti, and she asked, media is only window to the outer world, as you said. And as we all are aware about how the political parties, leaders influence the news channel, there are a lot of issues that need to be acknowledged, at least that there are so many filters that we are using, unfortunately. So the question is, how can a common person can trust these news channel? Basically, she wants to understand about the credibility of the news, that amid lot of disinformation, that and a lot of filters, how can a common person trust the credibility of the news in present situation?
Okay, it's a good question, and it's a very this is a situation that everybody faces. So what should I trust and what should I not trust, right? Now, media's job is to, of course, give you the truth, but let me tell you, it is a little idealistic. It never happens all the time. I mean, nobody in the world gives you truth, total truth. People give you partial truth. So the question is, like a lot of people will say that, see, there is a lot of debate on media autonomy, for example. Who finances? So how do you think that media is autonomous? Now, but the only thing is that, you know, every newspaper, every channel has a certain worldview because of the owner. He has an owner, right? So funding news is very critical. The people who fund the news, who fund the channel, who fund the thing, they will of course rule the content. So the question is, how do you trust? Now, I would say it comes from multiplicity of platforms. For example, in China, for example, you have only one newspaper, which is owned by the Communist Party, I mean, which is run by the Communist Party. So you know what news. In India, the advantage is that you've got multiple platforms, multiplicity of newspapers. If Times of India does not publish something, Hindustan Times will. If Hindustan Times does not publish something, Indian Express will. So you get to, so from partial truths from various sources, you get closer to the truth. You'll never get the total truth. So what happens is, I will say, what I would say is, never believe on one source of news. Never believe on one channel. You have to be multiple sourcing. News has to be sourced from multiple platforms. Then only you get the truth. If I read only Times of India, if I read only Hindustan Times, I will not get the total truth. So the more and more sourcing I have, sourcing of platforms, the better equipped I will be. And of course, I talked about news literacy. You must know that a certain news may be biased. Because how do you distinguish? Like we have the concept of paid news today. So how do you know paid news? It is there, of course. Many platforms carry it. So you should be able to judge from the report itself that, okay, I will not take it on face value. So don't take everything on face value. That's the whole point. Trust but verify.
Okay, that means access to multiple platforms is the only key to get closer to the partial truth, as Sir said. And so in continuation of the same question, there are some doubt in the mind of student, and Akash Mishra writes to us, sir, if robots are in the media industry, so will it affect us in sense of work and job opportunities? And then who will be the one who will be working for the media, the robots or us? Like is job, it's a futuristic question where I think student has really got worried about the job opportunities.
Good question. Good question. Now the question is, I would say that technology people have the wrong concept. When computers came to India, a lot of people thought that it'll eat into jobs, it'll take away a lot of jobs. But you must understand that it creates more jobs. When trucks came, one truck maybe carried the load of 10 bullock carts. So 10 bullock cart owners lost their jobs. But the question is, with the truck also came the roads, also came the dhabas, also came the petrol pumps. So it works like that. So when you talk about say drones, for example, say one drone, apparently you don't need pilots, right? So two pilots, it is taking away the jobs of two pilots. But you know how many people are required to manage a drone? 70 odd people. The drones that you see in Afghanistan, the US drones which are running and bombing sometimes, there are at least 70 people behind every drone, in terms of tracking, in terms of technology, in terms of maintenance, in terms of everything. So it is giving jobs to 70 people. It is taking away jobs of 2. So the question is that if you have this, so you have to be employable. You have to see your employability. So that's why you have to constantly keep pace with the technology. You have to constantly innovate. You have to be with the wave. Otherwise, you'll be unemployable. Today, suppose somebody who can't use a computer, like I had a student some time back, and he said last year actually, good student, knows everything, but he can't operate a computer, a laptop. He doesn't know how to operate work on the keypad. Now, do you think he'll be able to work? No. He might have the knowledge. He has everything, but he'll not be able to operate. So you must keep pace with the technology as well. That is very critical.
We must acquire the new skills that are required, and as sir said, the role and the nature of the jobs will change, and we have to keep pace with the kinds of new roles and opportunities we have in the journalism field. So next question is for Shivaji Sarkar sir. अब्दुल है, ये पूछते हैं सर, वर्तमान समय में मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया सरकार से सवाल करने के विपरीत सरकार की तारीफ करने का काम कर रही है. तो he has asked your comment that where we need to question government. Instead, we are just praising government, especially in these times. So your comment on this question, sir?
ये बहुत मुश्किल सवाल है. सवाल नहीं, उसका जवाब देना जरा मुश्किल है, क्योंकि जवाब देने के बाद ये जरूरी नहीं है कि हम आपके सामने बैठे ही हों. देखिए होता क्या है, हमारे वाइस चांसलर है, इकोनॉमिस्ट हैं, और वो कहते हैं कि ये जो लॉकडाउन का मौका है, इस मौके में स्टेट ने अपने हाथ में बहुत से ऐसी चीजें हथिया ली जो स्टेट को जरूरत नहीं है. और जब स्टेट इन सारी चीजों को हथिया लेती है तो आपके जो जीवन यापन का तरीका है उसको भी हथिया लेती है. और ये जब होता है तब पत्रकार और पत्रकारिता के सामने एक समस्या आती है कि क्या हम पत्रकारिता करें या जीवन बचाएं. क्योंकि अब कहा भी जा रहा है कि जान है तो जहान है, तो जान ही अगर नहीं है तो जहान कहाँ से होगी. तो ये एक संकट का मुहूर्त है. और दूसरी चीज, प्रदीप बागची जी ने एक चीज बहुत अच्छी बात कही कि जिस तरह से लॉकडाउन के दौरान सारे जो बिजनेसेस हैं उन पे जिस तरह का असर पड़ा, उससे विज्ञापन पर असर पड़ा. और विज्ञापन ही जो है पूरी मीडिया को चलाने का एक साधन है, अखबारी नहीं. अखबार हो, टेलीविजन हो, एंटरटेनमेंट मीडिया हो, या मीडिया के जितने भी एस्पेक्ट्स को आप ले लें तो विज्ञापन से ही चलते हैं. और विज्ञापन का जो बास्केट है जितना बड़ा होगा, यानी कि अलग अलग तरीके से जितना आएगा, तो अखबारों की जो स्वतंत्रता की हम बात करते हैं, पत्रकारिता की जो स्वतंत्रता की बात करते हैं, वो वहां से आती है. पर अगर वहां से ना आए, सिर्फ एक ही बास्केट से एक ही जगह से आए, तो पैसे देने वाले का फिक्र तो करना ही पड़ता है. मेरे ख्याल में इतना ही जवाब काफी है.
Yeah, thank you sir for that answer. Next question in the same line is by Jaspreet, and due to paucity of time, this is the last question that we are taking. And if our guest wants, they can share their email IDs with the students, so that if they have further more queries, they can write to them. So as of now, because of the paucity of time, I'm taking the last question, and it's in the same line of thought that the sir was sharing about the revenue and advertising. So the question is, and I think this question is posed to both of you, because the person has not written to whom he wants to specify this question. So both of you can answer this question. There's a suggestion from Jaspreet. He said, to deal with the monetary aspect, can we have laws to institutionalize public funding in media houses? And without any censorship or editing, can the government can help institutionalize public funding? And last thing that he has asked, in certain situation where even Prasar Bharati has failed, can we have a system where there can be no censorship and no editing role of government, but certainly they can help us in getting public fund? So that's the question posed to both of you. Sir, would you like to answer it
सरकार
first?
साहब पहले करे, उसके बाद मैं करता हूँ.
Yeah, we
चलिए,
should go with the
कर लेता हूँ.
seniority. Yes, sir.
नहीं, देखिए, this is a very critical question. Whether there should be what should be censorship by the state or not. In fact, if you ask me, I should say there should not be any censorship, because if the state does censorship, it chokes up avenues of information for itself. जो सेंसरशिप करते हैं उनकी सूचना के जो द्वार है वो बंद हो जाते हैं, और वो जब बंद हो जाता है, अगर हमें राष्ट्र चलाना है या सरकार चलाना है या प्रदेश चलाना है, तो फिर हमें वहां समस्या आती है, क्योंकि सरकार चलाना इतना आसान काम नहीं है. बिना फीडबैक के हम सरकार नहीं चला सकते. तो सेंसरशिप होगा तो मुझे लगता है कि अखबारों को तो नुकसान होगा ही, रीडर्स को भी नुकसान होगा, पर सबसे ज्यादा नुकसान जो होता है, जब भी कभी सेंसरशिप किया गया, 1975 में भी हमने देखा, 76 में भी देखा, जब इमरजेंसी लागू किया गया, और उसका सबसे बड़ा खामियाजा जो है, जो सरकार में बैठे थे उनको भुगतना पड़ा. सो सेंसरशिप तो किसी हालत में नहीं होनी चाहिए. अब एक सवाल जो बार बार सरकार के सामने से हम, या जो भी अथॉरिटी में होता है और जहां भी होता है, सिर्फ यही नहीं, देश विदेश में हर जगह हम देख रहे हैं कि सरकारें जो है वो ज्यादा ऑथोरिटेरियन होती जा रही है. G20 के अगर पिछले कुछ मीटिंग्स का आप हवाला हम दें तो हम पाएंगे कि G20 जो है अपने आप में डायरेक्टली इनडायरेक्टली उनके साथ जितनी भी सरकारें हैं उनको यही मैसेज दे रही है कि आप ज्यादा ऑथोरिटेरियन होते जाइए, बैंकाइजेशन करते जाइए, क्योंकि बैंकों का दबाव रहेगा तो जनता पे दबाव रहेगा. तो ये सारी चीजें जो की जा रही है उसका नतीजा हम देख क्या रहे हैं कि हमारी जो आर्थिक व्यवस्था है, जो इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन है, उस पर उसका असर पड़ रहा है. लोग जो हैं अभी लॉकडाउन से पहले फ्रांस में, जर्मनी में, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में, हर जगह जो है बैंकों का जो एक अत्याचार, आप लोग वो कह रहे हैं बैंकाइजेशन का जो एट्रोसिटी है, उसके खिलाफ तरह तरह से आवाजें उठ रही थी, और कहीं कहीं वायलेंट आवाजें भी उठ रही थी, तो फ्रांस में उठ रही थी, और उसको सरकारें बंद करना चाह रही थी. तो ये सारी चीजें जो हैं, देखिए इस वक्त जो है वो आवाजें थोड़ी दब गई हैं, पर ये मत सोचिए कि आवाजें जब दब जाती है वो ज्यादा खतरनाक होती है. तो मैं चाहूंगा, देखिए किसी भी सिस्टम में किसी भी तरह का चेक्स एंड बैलेंस तो ठीक है, वो अखबारें खुद करती है. जब हम अखबार में रिपोर्टिंग करते हैं, जब हम बायस की बात करते हैं, जब हमने कहा जो एविडेंस बेस्ड रिपोर्टिंग जो होती है, कि हम सारी चीजों को आपके सामने प्रॉस एंड कॉन्स जो अपने उनके फेवर में है और जिसके खिलाफ है किसी फैक्ट्स के, हम दोनों फैक्ट्स को रखते हैं, और उसके बाद जो खबर आती है वो रीडर्स के सामने होती है. रीडर्स डिसाइड करें कि खबर के बारे में वो क्या कहना चाहता है. तो रीडर खबर जो है सोशल डायलॉग के लिए होता है, और उस पे अगर किसी भी तरह का व्यवधान होता है, एनी काइंड ऑफ obstruction in that process of social dialogue, that will mutate the dialogue, and mutation of dialogue is more dangerous for any country, any nation, any organization. So I'm always for a free flow of discussion, free flow of talks, and free flow of news. न्यूज गलत हो सकता है, मैं नहीं कह रहा हूं कि हर वक्त न्यूज सही ही होगा. गलत न्यूज को करेक्ट करने का मौका देना चाहिए, न कि उसके खिलाफ जो है आप एक पुलिस एक्शन करें, उसको डराए और धमकाएं. सो ये एक सोसाइटल जो है रेजिलियंस की जरूरत है, और इन चीजों को समझने की जरूरत है. थैंक यू.
Very well said, sir. There should be social dialogue, there should be corrective measures, but not punitive measures. And media people can be corrective, but sir, in the same line, the student has also asked about public funding. Like, we have BBC, the BBC works on the public fund. That's a tax, that the common people pay to run the BBC. Now, apart from censorship, the student has also asked about, can we have a system like public funding where government can help, the media in generating public fund? So, Bakshi sir,
Yeah.
what's your take on it?
Good. अच्छा हुआ सरकार साहब talked about the censorship, and I will talk about the funding part, which also they are very related actually.
Yes, yes.
And what he talked about was censorship is actually media has to have self-censorship. That is what we believe in, and that's why we have a Press Council of India. That will take care that if somebody is crossing the Lakshman Rekha or whatever. But media's job is to ask questions.
Sure. Not self-censorship, self-regulation is the better word.
Self-regulation, exactly, is a better word. Correct. Correct, sir. Self-regulation is a better word, actually. Censorship is a negative word. Because media is the fourth estate. Why is it the fourth estate? Because it is the watchdog. Why it's a watchdog? It can't be your lapdog. It is your watchdog, mind you. So that's very critical. So he talked about the censorship. I'll talk about the funding part. Now, funding also actually is very critical because it affects your autonomy. जिसका कहते हैं जिसकी लाठी उसकी भैंस, तो जिसका पैसा उसका news. So it will happen. Like suppose tomorrow I start a newspaper, I'm a big businessman. Of course, the newspaper will carry my worldview by and large, right? It will not write something which is against my worldview. So it is natural. It will happen. So how do you get out of this? Now somebody talked about the BBC example. I'm coming to that. Now India, as I said earlier, India is saved because of multiplicity of platforms. We don't have one newspaper, two newspapers. We have got thousands of newspapers. We have got n number of channels. We have got n number of other magazines and all that. So that takes care of the truth part. I mean, the autonomy part to that extent. Otherwise, media is autonomous will be a myth to say that. No media organization by itself can be totally autonomous. We get media autonomy in that sense that we have plurality of participants. Second is the funding part. Now somebody talked about institutionalized public funding, right? Like BBC. Now institutionalized public funding can also have its own biases, by the way. For example, like Doordarshan and All India Radio, this is also institutionalized. It's public funding after all. It is government money, it's taxpayers' money after all. But the question is, they don't depend on ads. They don't depend on ads from Raymond's and all that. But still, can they be autonomous? They can't. So, for example, BBC, the moment you have institutionalized public funding, it again cannot be autonomous. So today the concept is crowdfunding. So it is not known who are contributing. So the concept is crowd-funded media, right? BBC, I will give an example. BBC is a world news service, right? It calls itself the World News Service. It's the world's foremost news channel. Now, when Princess Diana died in 1998, BBC was on that news for 4 days continuously, as if nothing else was happening outside. Nothing else was happening. So what is this? Is it not bias? So BBC has its own biases again. So don't think that, BBC, just because it is public funded, is without bias. So the thing is crowdfunding today. That's why a lot of organizations you'll find today are talking about that, they are asking for maybe $1 from you, $2 from you, so that, so you don't have total control over the media. If I give $1 million, I'll have control. But I'm giving $2. So I'll not have control. But at the same time, with $2 with the volume, they're getting money to run, so they can be independent. Right? I think that answers the question a bit. But it's a long debate actually, that it can take 1 hour to explain the whole thing. Media autonomy is a huge topic actually.
Yeah, actually indeed it's a huge topic, but whatever you talked about, it was a very good thing, because as an academician I can understand, the people who are coming from the field has a better understanding of the situation, and the concept that you talk about crowdfunding is indeed a very new one and very secure one in a way, because it the kind of pressure we have nowadays from the government and institution is very big. Thank you, sir, and thank you Pradeep sir, and thank you Shivaji sir, that you took out your precious time. It was indeed a very good session. In fact, I've learned a lot of you from you guys. And now I would like to call Mr. Manoj Rath, HOD of our department, HOD of Journalism and Mass Communication. Manoj sir, if you can just hear us. Manoj sir?
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes sir, you're very much audible. Yeah, it's over to you.
Something has happened to my camera, but आवाज मेरी फिर भी आएगी, दबेगी.
Maybe we can manage sir, आपकी आवाज बहुत बुलंद है, सुनाई दे रही है.
First of all,
आवाज ही तो दबाई जा रही है, इसलिए आपकी आवाज सुनाई पड़ रही है.
thanks a lot, Professor Sarkar and Mr. Bakshi, for such a lively, enlightening session. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm sure we have around close to 500 participants. They also enjoyed it thoroughly. And there was so much to take away from here. Because Professor Sarkar, you spoke like a journalist, not like a academician. And you spoke so candidly and honestly and frankly, ridiculously everything. So that was very, very nice. And Bakshi sir, as usual, was very flamboyant, and his vast knowledge across spheres was very, very nice. I will just say that touch one or 2 points here. First of all, sir, I would say prior to COVID-19, there was no reference point for anybody to, to how to tackle it, how to report it. Because I have still friends who are there in, on all media, like electronic, print and all. So they found it very difficult to cover it. And Professor Sarkar, you were so right. In the belligerence, they just forgot to take the precautions, the necessary safety precautions. Nor they were also guided by their editors or managing editors how to go about things, because this was something very new. And that is the reason lots of media people fell ill and caught the infection and stuff. And there were no insurance and nothing was there, and they were just taking care of themselves, and they were heavily infected. And on top of that, like the freedom of the press, you are absolutely right. That was scuttled. I mean, they were not allowed to report information. I believe around April 3rd week or so, we got a directive, print and all media, that they cannot publish or print anything without the prior approval of a certain body from the central government. So that was one thing. And because of the lockdown situation, sir, all of us were inside our homes. So the only source of information was the little bit of print which was accessible, which was like not getting printed or published as to the liking of the people who wanted to consume it. Because like you people, I also get up and I'm habituated to reading at least 2-3 papers before I begin the day, which is stopped because of infection or spread of infection. And the only source remained was digital media and electronic television channels. But people, like sir, here I would say that people are smart. Like Bharti sir was saying, I mean, you got to verify your news and you have to check it with 3 channels, then you get the real picture, because nobody tells you the truth. But sir, I want to tell you here that people are very smart. They get their own truth. They will watch ABP, they will watch NDTV, they will watch even DNA, Sudhir Chaudhary, and they will find the truth, and they will also see the digital thing. Then, sir, gobblers. Of course, we are gobblers. We have to consume news. We're the biggest consumer. And then, sir, one more point which I wanted to mention was you said convergence, transmedia and all. So that has already happened, because I have friends and I was there till 2018. And I saw reporters, sorry I'm using the curse, they were really cursing their editors because they had to report to 3 editors now. One was handling the app, one was handling the electronic, the other one was handling the digital portal. So they had to write 1-minute copy for the television. They used to write 20 seconds for the radio app, and they used to write as much as possible for the digital, because there was no problem of space over there. So they used to stay back 3-4 hours after the shift and used to write different copies for each. So, but it is here to stay, sir, that's for sure. And coming to robotics, I'm still imagining when you said that line, being, getting the news from a robo. So that will take some time. I'm in the old school of thought. I would rather see animated, agitated anchor in the newsroom playing to the galleries and listen to the news like that, rather than having a robo and saying the news, delivering the news in a monotonous manner. And sir, I am a very optimist person, so I would, in the end, say that society, though is torn between information, but sir, journalism will survive, and there should be free flow of information for.
Yes.
So that is what I want to, end with. And thank you again. Thank you so much for such a brilliant session, sir. We thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm sure there was so much to learn for all the media students and journalism students. And we shall meet again in an offline mode in the campus, where you can address our students face to face, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, sir. It's just a small announcement for the participants. Everyone will get the certificate, and the certificate will be sent onto their registered email IDs. So within a fortnight, you will get the certificates on your email ID. Thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants and
Thank you so
guests
much.
for
Thank you
coming
so much.
and enlightening us.
Thank you so much.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Manoj sir ko bhi thank you. So the lovely words, the way he summed up the whole thing.
Yes, very well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so
You're
much.
Thank you, Sarkar sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mithali. Thank you so much for finally getting me connected.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Chalo, bye. Okay.
Log me out, huh? So that I
I
can.
am logging out. Don't worry.